truths that the church considers to be divinely inspired in that story. Number one is that God started the creation process. God willed to create the universe, to create everything. The second point is that God took a role in the creation of the human person. They tell us through that God breathed into Adam and Eve, and they became living beings. We're not just bodies, we have a soul, and our soul comes from God. That's why we're created in God's image. And the third truth is that everything God has created is good. If you remember at the beginning when they're going through each day and each kind of paragraph ends, and God saw how good it was. We are good because God, who is good, created us in his image. But then the question for people, throughout the centuries is, well, if God created everything and God is good and we're good and everything is good, why is there pain and suffering? And today's section from the book of Genesis helps to answer that question. The reason there is pain and suffering is because part of his creation, part of creating us, God gave us free will. God is love, and the nature of love, you can't force it on others, or we will be slaves. God did not create slaves, he created children. So we have that option, that potential to obey God or not to obey God. That's how we express our love. And the story tells us today that Adam and Eve decided to disobey God through, the story of not eating from the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden. But what kind of tree it is? It's about knowing good and evil. God is not a God who just wanted to be involved in the beginning and in the end of the process of creation, but a God who wants to have a relationship with us throughout our lives, throughout the creation. A God who wanted to see or saw his role as the one guiding us by telling us what is good and what is evil. But we chose to take over that ourselves. And the devil tempts Eve by saying, well, you can't be like God. You don't need God to tell you what's good and what's evil. Why don't you decide for yourself? And when we do this, that's why there's suffering and pain. Because a lot of time, no one chooses to do evil knowing, well, this is evil. They choose what they think is good for them. But sometimes that hurts others. It makes others suffer. That's selfishness. God can tell us what's good and what's evil because God has no stake in it. It doesn't impact him. He knows truly what's good for everyone because he loves all his children, not some of them. But even today, we have the same struggles. We want to decide what's good and what's evil, what's right and what's wrong. We rebel when the church tells us, well, no, God says this is what's right, this is what's wrong. That's why it is right and wrong. We still give in to the same temptation because we don't trust that God cares for us more than we care for ourselves. That God knows what's best for us more than we know for ourselves. It's that sin of pride. And that's why we emphasize in Jesus that Jesus was obedient even unto death. Jesus did not act like Adam and Eve. He did not give to the temptation. But he accepted death and suffering because he trusted God. Not because God wanted him to suffer, but he was obedient to God, trusting that God knows what's best for the salvation of the world. Jesus could have saved himself anytime he wanted to. But he trusted in God's plan of salvation for all his children. I think that's something we need to kind of work on. It's a constant thing. It's always a challenge for us. It's always, tempting for us to say, well, no, I'm going to do what I think is right for me. Rather than trust in God and say no to the temptation of the devil.